Why is cybersecurity so important? Because a malicious software attack or data breach can affect our ability to teach and assess students, perform business functions like payroll, and damage our reputation, which has implications of its own. We're also at risk of penalties under federal and state laws, losing federal funding, and liability from civil lawsuits. This training video is a short follow-up to the 3-part SJCOE cybersecurity training video series. In this training, we will cover the following topics: changes to how web browsers indicate secure connections, using email and online storage accounts provided by SJCOE for work purposes, student data privacy requirements, a deeper dive into how phishing attacks work and what happens when they do. They say the only thing constant is change, and that is certainly true when it comes to technology. Let's cover some recent changes to web browsers that affect the way they indicate a secure connection. Previously, when visiting a site whose address starts with HTTPS, you'd want to look for the little lock and a green secure notation, indicating the connection from your web browser to the server you're connected to is encrypted to prevent unauthorized access. It does not, however, guarantee the server you're connected to isn't run by criminals, so labeling it as secure may convey a false sense of security. Because of this, browser vendors are inverting their approach, changing what they draw your attention to. Instead of noting sites using encryption as secure, they'll begin noting sites that do not use encryption as not secure. What does this mean? Remember, an unsecure connection means information isn't encrypted to prevent unauthorized access. But if you're reading a newspaper's web page, are the news articles something that needs to be encrypted? Probably not. But what if you have a login to the newspaper to read the articles? In this case, your username and password are sent over the connection, and that information should definitely be encrypted. The point is, anytime confidential information is sent over the internet, it is critical the information be encrypted. Now, it will take some time for websites to encrypt everything to avoid this notation, but use caution and good judgment when you see sites noted as not secure. Here are some reminders of safe browsing habits. Safe browsing relies heavily on trust. Do you trust the site you're interacting with? Do you trust the information it contains is accurate and unbiased? Do you trust the vendor who created software you downloaded? And more importantly, do you trust the site you download the software from? It's important to use your instincts and common sense. If something doesn't seem right, is out of place, or otherwise suspicious, exercise caution, just as you would in the real world. Make sure you're interacting with trustworthy established vendors, and make sure the web address is spelled properly. Criminals register misspellings of sites and make them look like the real thing. As a reminder, all employees must follow SJCOE policies and procedures, DP/JPA security policies, and the acceptable use policy and computer use agreement, and keep in mind employees should have no expectation of privacy when using any SJCOE provided technology. All employees should have read and signed the new SJCOE acceptable use policy and computer use agreement, but let's take a moment to highlight one important point from that document. Only use SJCOE provided accounts for work-related activities. Do not use personal email accounts or online storage accounts like Dropbox, Box, and others for conducting work-related activities. Doing so may subject your account to discovery in the event of a lawsuit or public records request, so only use accounts provided by SJCOE for work. In the same vein, avoid storing personal documents on work devices. California Ed Code requires all contracts with companies that manage, store, and retrieve pupil records and student-generated content to establish the following. The LEA owns and controls student records. Provide information on how students can control content along with a way to transfer content to a new personal account later. Prohibit third parties from using student information for purposes outside of those named in the contract. Describe how parents, guardians, or students can review and correct information in their records. Outline actions third parties will take to ensure students' data is secure and confidential. Describe procedures for notifying parents, guardians, or students in the event of an unauthorized disclosure of student records. Certify that student records will not be retained or available to the third party once the contract is over. Describe how LEAs and third parties will comply with FERPA. Prohibit third parties from using personally identifiable information from student records to target advertising to students. The law is simple. Make sure all contracts specify those items. This is relatively straightforward for big contracts used institution-wide. For example, contracts we have with Google and Microsoft have already been addressed. But consider when a teacher uses a third-party app in Classroom or a website that stores student-created content. If the app has a click-through agreement, one where the user agrees to the terms and conditions of use, or the website has a terms and conditions of use, a contract is established. This sounds like a daunting task, but there is help if you use the California Student Data Privacy Agreement, CSDPA, which is the de facto statewide agreement and has been signed by hundreds of vendors and California LEAs. There's a searchable registry of agreements, and once an LEA uploads an execute agreement, other LEAs can piggyback off that. The LEA still has to sign the agreement, but no further negotiating with the vendor is necessary, as they have already agreed to the terms. If you are a teacher, please check with your administrator to verify the apps you use are covered by an existing agreement. If you're an administrator, please familiarize yourself with the CSDPA by visiting www.sjcoe.net/CSDPA or attend one of the trainings offered by the IT department this fall. It's one thing to know what phishing is, but we want to help you understand how criminals use phishing to attack us and other organizations. Let's look at a few real-world examples. Scenario A: ransomware. In this scenario, an employee becomes the victim of a ransomware attack. An employee received an email containing a Microsoft Word file as an attachment. When the file was opened, the employee was prompted to enable macros contained in the file. Macros are computer code used to perform calculations, look up data, or perform other automated functions. Unfortunately, this macro downloaded malicious software from the internet and ran it. The malware began encrypting the employee's files, making them unusable, and because the employee also had access to a file server, it also began encrypting those files as well. The employee quickly realized something was wrong and called the help desk. Both the computer and the server were taken offline and had to be restored from a backup. There was some data loss as only the employee's documents folder was backed up. The good news is the employee reacted quickly and contacted the help desk. This prevented the problem from getting much worse. Scenario B: establishing trust. In this scenario, several messages are sent back and forth with a criminal trying to gain an employee's trust before asking them for confidential data, access to an account, or some other thing of value. Specifically, a user received a message from a criminal impersonating a high-level employee asking if they were available for a quick question or to help with an urgent matter. The user responded with an offer to help, and several messages back and forth followed. Once the user established a dialogue, the criminal sent the ask, which in one highly publicized case was for W-2 information for a large group of employees. Scenario C: compromised account. In this scenario, an employee falls victim to a phishing attempt by trying to log into a malicious system. An employee clicked a link in an email that took them to a familiar-looking login page where the employee entered their username and password. At this point, the criminals have full access to the employee's account. We have seen criminals create automatic rules that deleted all subsequent emails to hide their activities and then begin sending spam to other users. Unfortunately, this causes our mail servers to end up on blocked lists, preventing legitimate messages from getting through. We have also seen criminals go through compromised accounts to see if there is any information they can use. For example, in one case, criminals found a thread of messages containing a legitimate wire transfer request that included all the right recipients and attachments along with signatures. They duplicated the entire thread, change the amount and bank account information, and send the message from the compromised account to all the right people. Luckily, the fraudulent request was caught very quickly. Remember too that access to an email account is all that's needed to exercise the site's "I forgot my username or password" feature. This allows criminals to compromise other systems the user has access to. The majority of these scams can be stopped by evaluating the sender's email address and being suspicious of unsolicited emails. Emails from companies you don't do business with, messages containing generic greetings or unusual spelling and grammatical errors, and messages with urgent calls to action, especially those asking you to log in somewhere. It's also critical to validate links without clicking on them. To do this, hover over the link or tap and hold on a mobile device. Remember, if you receive spam, forward the message to spam@sjcoe.net. And don't hesitate to reach out to the help desk if you doubt the authenticity of a message. We would rather you ask than have your account compromised. If something doesn't seem right, it often isn't. If you have feedback about this training, please send it to the link on your screen.